We should always be asking ourselves the question, who's not here? Who's not at this table? Is somebody missing here? Are we not talking to someone? Do we not, are we not reaching out to someone? Are we not contacting someone? Who's not here? We should always be asking ourselves the question, does everybody have voice here? Without also speaking for them. One of the trickier things. I think we always have to ask those questions. I think we always have to ask questions like, and since your question is so general, I'm going to be real general here. What's the scholarship to is kind of a big question. Mm-hmm. But we ought to be always furthering the question of collaboration, of inclusivity, of being willing to be to do work that in some sense is self-critical. I mean, that we're examining our positions, being willing to deconstruct categories and operable definitions and say, well, these aren't working anymore, or we weren't noticing that these were sort of screening our view or something important. We're really talking about a habit of mind here that I think this field needs to have and does have. I mean, I think we have this, what I'm describing. But I do think it is a kind of habit, a disciplinary stance, a frame of mind, of a sort of general sort of climate. And I think that people worked very hard to make it that. And having been in the field when it was less so, in the early 80s or the late 70s, for instance, where comp theory is really sort of dominated by discussion of major theorists, Knievy, D'Angelo, we're done with that. We're way done with that. That kind of, and I like their work. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I can remember a time when what you did was, you studied this theory and this theory and this theory and this theory, and who were the expressionists and who were the romanticists and who were the social constructionists, as if that meant that was what you did. And I think we still need to understand the founding of those kinds of conversations, but I don't think that ought to be our work. Our work ought to be, how to teach writing and what that means in all the different sites. Our sites of where that's happening is so expanded. We just have to keep moving in that direction, all the time. Get writing out of the box. I mean, we may teach on the campus, but that's not where it is, So I think we're just pushing out all the time. That's what everybody's work ought to be doing. Mm-hmm. It'll be pushing it out, pushing it further out. And if it's pushing us back, we ought to be willing to say, well, I say no to that. We can't go backwards now. We have to keep moving forward. And that challenges us because we have to have methodology that allows us to do that. We have to be willing to make mistakes. And we have to be willing not to be very comfortable. And I think that feminism is never says, oh, we're done. We're never done. It's just maybe we just haven't seen that next place that we're supposed to be working, or that next way that we need to be working. It can never be done.